Welcome to the Resilience webinar series produced by the Educational Partnerships for Innovation in Communities Network, EPICN, and the US EPA Office of Research and Development. EPICN exists to unite the human capital of universities with local governments and communities to improve the quality of life and social wealth for all involved. The Resilience webinar series is designed to highlight partnership project outcomes and impacts on local resilience, and it's presented by the EPICN members who are featured here, as well as those who are supporting in other avenues, the William and Flora Hewlett Foundation, and again through our MOU with the US Environmental Protection Agency, which I'll talk about more shortly. Today we're highlighting the City of Ramsey and the University of Minnesota's EPICN program called the Resilient Communities Project, which facilitated the relationship between the university and the city. My name is Marshall Curry, but I'm joined today, most importantly, by Mike Greco, the director of the Resilient Communities Project, the EPICN program being featured, as I mentioned, Kurtis Ulrich, the city administrator of the City of Ramsey, who was a former city partner of RCP and also a former advisory board member for the university program. And also Dr. Fernando Burga, who's the assistant professor at the Hubert H. Humphrey School of Public Affairs at the University of Minnesota, who participates regularly in RCP projects, including the one featured today with the City of Ramsey. Director Greco, Administrator Ulrich, and Dr. Burga, welcome to you all. Really glad and thankful for you to be here. Since this is the first webinar, I'm going to spend a few minutes introducing myself and my co-moderator and this series. I'm the program manager at EPICN, and I work to support all of the member programs of the network. And again, the network programs are designed to facilitate university local government partnerships around the globe at a local level. I also work to support the EPICN Board of Directors and make sure our nonprofit is growing and supporting our members as appropriate. I'm joined today by my co-moderator, Jose Zambrana, who is the Senior Science Advisor at the US EPA Office of Research and Development. And he has led a body of work started as of the second half of 2020, when EPICN and the US EPA Office of Research and Development signed an MOU and began working together to track and identify locally focused projects tackling resilience in any form. We documented project information from around our network, as well as some others, with the help of some amazing interns, and you can read about their work on our website. Today marks a new phase of the MOU as we begin to publicly recognize some of the outstanding local efforts in this webinar format before you today to help catalyze other such work. With that, I'm going to hand it over to Jose. I'd like you to come in here and tell us a little bit more about this how this webinar relates to the MOU and your work at the US EPA.
Thank you so much, Marshall. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, great. Well, welcome to everyone. I'm Jose Zambrana. I am a Senior Science Advisor at the Center for Environmental Measurement and Modeling at EPA's Office of Research and Development. We are the research and science arm of the agency, and we are glad that you have all joined us. We have been working with EPICN for a number of years now. We really saw the great opportunity to share resources, to work with them and connecting universities and local governments to address sustainability and resilience challenges. When we were thinking about how we can explore key questions about resilience and community resilience in our sustainable and healthy research communities, our sustainable and healthy communities research program, we thought that working with EPICN would be the perfect thing. And so that's why we have an MOU to work together, and we appreciate that the information that the network has in terms of the projects that's completed is something that we are mining and taking a close look at. We are trying to understand and do an analysis of community plans and projects for resilience, and then to create a story map. And this really speaks to the need to inform best practices for resilience, and to really understand what do communities really do on the ground. And that's why we wanted to work with EPICN, because it's about on-the-ground projects, not just plans, but real work. And so what we've been doing together is creating a search methodology to look at the EPICN database of projects for key resilience topics and needs. And then we're going to use that information to create a story-based map in the Enviro Atlas, which is a mapping tool created by the EPA that has all these GIS layers that show ecosystem services and how they relate to people and places. You can go to the next slide, Marshall. And so, as I said, we're looking at real-world priorities as defined by the communities that we all serve. Asking questions about how do resilience concepts translate to action? Where should EPA focus its support? Are there gaps? How can we bridge the sustainability and resilience discourses? And then, of course, share these ideas across multiple platforms. I'll just give you a quick mock-up of what we hope maybe our map will look like. It will be an Enviro Atlas. It will provide examples of resilience. And of course, one of the ones that we plan to highlight is the one that will be featured today. We were excited to really see how this EPIC program had keyed in on resilience needs. And so that's why we're here. And we're excited to hear what our speakers have to say on these themes today. So thank you very much, Marshall. I'm happy to pass it back to you.
Wonderful. As Jose mentioned, today we're focusing on one project, but also other projects that all took place within one partnership that occurred during the 2017-2018 academic year, again featuring the City of Ramsey and the University of Minnesota. So I'd like to get underway by asking our featured panelists some questions, just to kind of warm up after that long introduction, which in the future series events we won't be doing because we'll have announced it this time around. So let's go in the order of introduction. So Director Greco, then Dr. Burga, and then Administrator Ulrich. We'll go ahead and go that way. And the first lightning round question for you all, just to kind of unmute and answer as quick as you can, is thinking about where you live currently. What's your favorite place, like locally?
My favorite place, this is Mike Greco, is the North Shore of Minnesota, which is on the shore of Lake Superior.
Thanks, Mike. We'll go Dr. Burga.
Hello, everyone. My favorite place is a sculpture garden that is located in Franconia, which is northeast of Minneapolis. Northwest, I'm sorry. Or northeast, sorry.
Administrator Ulrich.
My favorite place locally here is the Mississippi River, and it actually is right between the place I work and the place I live, so I cross it every day.
Awesome. And what other EPICN's an association, and when we're thinking of resilience, it's important to keep track of best practices in the fields of your expertise. So I'm curious, what other associations are you involved in or are you following right now?
For me, I would say the American Planning Association, which I'm a member of, and has been doing a lot of great work around resilience, equity, and sustainability, particularly the last few years.
For me, I'm also a member of the American Planning Association, but I'm also co-chair of the American Collegiate Schools of Planning Conference, POSIG, which is the Planners of Color's Interest Group, which focuses on a lot of issues which intersect with equity, race, sustainability, and resilience.
For me, my focus is on city administration. I work with the International City Managers Association, as well as a statewide association, League of Minnesota Cities, in their efforts, in addition to the work with the RCP and the University of Minnesota. Also am on the board of a local art center that has a broad mission to engage a community and use art to reach underserved communities.
Wonderful. And final lightning round question really quickly. What newspaper, radio, or journalist are you currently following?
I'm a regular reader of the New York Times and the Washington Post.
I listen a lot to the Daily in the New York Times.
Lately, because of the situation, the Osterholm update on COVID-19 has been a regular thing that I listen to just to keep up to date.
I hadn't heard that one. I'll make a note to look at that one later.
Yeah.
So I asked those lightning round questions in this next question because one of the biggest, I think, resilience issues we're going to need to figure out is the staffing and future generation of local government leaders. And so I asked those questions to try and help us better understand ways in which the next generation, as well as my own generation, can learn more about the profession and get involved, and also to learn the path to get there. So again, let's go ahead and start with Administrator Ulrich, because you're the local government leader in the room. We'll go ahead and start with you. What was your career path to get to where you're at? Just really briefly, and then we'll go to Dr. Burga and then Mike finally.
Briefly, I started out in planning and economic development and got into administration. Worked for 4 years for the State Department of Natural Resources as an assistant commissioner. So got a broad perspective of state government and how local government fits into that. And then came back the last 20 years, have been back into local government and utilizing my experience with the state level and other local governments to kind of bring it all together. I recently completed a dissertation in my doctorate studies, and my topic was the role of public administrators in public art collaborations. So that gave me an opportunity to research some other communities and how they collaborate, in particularly with public art installations.
Wonderful.
So, I think that I'll try to keep it brief. I started with an undergraduate career path, which was completely unrelated to issues that had to do with the built environment. I studied political science and international studies. But then I did a master's in architecture and urban design. And for many years, I was a planner, architect, and urban designer at a firm in Washington, D.C. that did a lot of master plan developments focused on sustainability and new urbanism. From there, I became interested in a lot of different questions that drove me towards an academic path. And I went to do my PhD at UC Berkeley, where I was exposed to a whole set of other new ideas, eventually leading me to get a position here at the University of Minnesota. I've been able to combine a lot of different interests, which include design work, include qualitative methods, and also planning history, and also working with municipal leaders in order to generate not only questions, but solutions which are very grounded from the experience of residents and the needs of public policymakers.
And for me, it's kind of a long and winding road, but I'll keep it short. Like Fernando, I started out in academic backgrounds that really had nothing to do with the work I'm doing today, communication studies and political science. And I worked in the field of communication for about 15 years before I went back to graduate school to earn a master's degree in urban planning. And that really sparked my interest in how academia could work collaboratively with local communities on projects that were community identified. And so I have been doing that work since about 2008 at the University of Minnesota, first with a program that was funded by a grant from a local foundation. And then I learned about the EPIC model back in 2011 And in 2012, helped to co-found the Resilient Communities Project, which I managed for a few years and now direct.
Thanks all. I'll hand it over to Jose for the next round of questions.
Okay, great. And Marshall, one of the things I forgot to do was to mention my team. So let me amend that just to acknowledge some people here on the call and who helped. There's Laura Block, Sustainability Advisor for Region 9 in San Francisco. I want to acknowledge Laura and her partnership. And then Molly Jenkins, which is an ORISE participant here at EPA. Jessica Daniel, who is also a lead on the Enviro Atlas. And then a team of interns, Adam Shipley, Josephine Justin, Kelly Norton. So I just wanted to acknowledge all the team. Okay, so let's move to maybe some questions about the RCP. So Mike, let's start with you. What type of work does the Resilient Communities Project do? Maybe you could offer a short overview or some kind of example of what you do and how you build partnerships.
Sure. Well, RCP provides research and technical assistance to local government agencies in Minnesota. We essentially match community identified projects with teams of graduate and professional students at the University of Minnesota. And then those students complete the projects as part of an academic course in which they're enrolled under the supervision of their course instructor. So our partners are primarily city and county government agencies, but we've also worked with watershed districts, school districts, transit districts, as well as some municipal serving organizations like the League of Minnesota Cities. And I think what distinguishes our program from other community serving programs at the university is first, our focus on community resilience as a framework. That framework guides our work, and it's loosely adapted from the Rockefeller Foundation's 1,000 Resilient Cities initiative. So we think about resilience very broadly to include the capacity of individuals, institutions, communities, and natural systems to adapt and thrive in response to changes, stresses, and shocks. And those changes, stresses, and shocks could be environmental, social, economic, technological, political. So again, we think about it very broadly. And we also recognize that resilience is very context dependent. So we ask communities to explain how each project that they nominate for a partnership with RCP would ultimately help to advance resilience in their community. I think the other thing that's unique is the scale of our partnerships, which is flexible. Most of our partnerships have been with a single community over the course of an entire academic year. That was the case with the City of Ramsey that we're talking about today, and was true of most of our partnerships during our first 6 or 7 years of operation. But since COVID, we've seen much more interest in smaller scale partnerships working on 1 or 2 projects. So we try to be flexible and adapt to what local communities are telling us they need and how best to approach those partnerships. Marshall, if you could advance the slides, a couple slides, I think. We've talked about that one, but the next one is sort of an overview of our partnership with the City of Ramsey, which again took place during the 2017-2018 academic year. And as part of that partnership, city staff initially identified 21 different projects that they wanted to work on, encompassing a broad range of issues that reflected the community's strategic priorities at the time. So that included projects related to housing, transportation, public safety, environmental management, all of the issue areas that you see here. And for those of you who are interested, you can see all of the projects completed during that partnership, as well as the student deliverables by visiting the URL that's at the bottom of this slide. That'll list all the projects that were completed during that academic year. Next slide, Marshall. So I want to walk through quickly just one example project that I think illustrates how the program works, and maybe one that we'll talk more about as the conversation continues. At the time we partnered with Ramsey, they had an established business expansion and retention program in place, but they also realized that the retail landscape was changing very rapidly. They were finding it difficult to help attract and retain new businesses to the community. And so they wanted to explore some new initiatives to accomplish that. And one of the ideas was to develop a vision and a plan for a business incubator. So work on this project took place in both fall of 2017 and spring of 2018. And we matched this project with 3 different teams of students. So first, to assess the feasibility of a business incubator, we engaged a team of public policy graduate students enrolled in a community and economic development class during the fall semester. And these students researched extended case studies of 4 different types of business incubators that are commonly found in Minnesota. Government-owned approaches, STEM-based, nonprofit, and co-working models. So that really helped the city sort of understand the landscape of what was possible and what was already happening in Minnesota. Also during that fall semester, we engaged a team of urban planning graduate students in Dr. Burga's land use planning class. And those students were tasked with assessing the economic development assets in Ramsey, interviewing local businesses to understand what their needs and challenges were in starting a business, and more broadly, documenting some of the benefits and challenges of using business incubators as an economic development tool. So that helped bring this project more into the context of Ramsey, understanding what businesses there were looking for. And that initial work also led the city's economic development manager to settle on a restaurant incubator as the most appropriate model for the city of Ramsey to think about. So that informed our choice of a final student team to complete the project. So during the spring 2018 semester, we recruited a team of RCP fellows. These are graduate and professional students that can come from any academic discipline, and they volunteer their time to work on RCP projects. So they're not gaining credit for this, or they're not getting paid. They're really doing it for the experience and the opportunity to gain skills and apply their knowledge. So this team included students from, among other disciplines, the business school and the public affairs school. And those students completed a market analysis of Ramsey's restaurant customer draw area. They researched case studies of successful food-oriented business incubators in Minnesota and elsewhere. And their final report to the city included best practices and recommendations for establishing a restaurant incubator in Ramsey, which set the stage for the city to consider moving forward with this initiative. So I think this example demonstrates some of the benefits of RCP's approach to these kinds of partnerships, the ability to access students and faculty from a broad range of disciplinary backgrounds, whatever happens to be relevant to the project at the time, a structure for engaging literally hundreds of students in a way that's manageable for city staff. All told, we engaged more than 300 students to work on the 21 projects that we completed with the City of Ramsey, but in a way that the city staff could manage. And finally, the ability to adapt the focus of a project as we learn more throughout the process. So in this case, we moved from a very general exploration of business incubators to a specific focus on that restaurant incubator as the right approach for Ramsey.
Hey, thanks very much, Mike. Really neat how all of that came together and you came to that focus. I want to move to Administrator Ulrich. And Administrator, can you talk a little bit about your role with the city and sort of your vantage point with respect to building this partnership with RCP? And we're interested in what resilience work the city is interested in and why you wanted to build this relationship to do projects together.
Thank you. Similar to Mike's comments, we take a broad approach to resiliency and how that impacts our community. It really, this program really fit in well to some of the work we were doing with our 2040 comprehensive plan, because we knew that a lot of the issues that could be addressed with this type of program were projects that we could put in place today to make our city more what we'd like it to be in the future. And so both our like near-term strategic plan for the next 5 years, as well as looking at 2040, a lot of the concepts we had the opportunity to talk about and get researched and get a good foundation for were projects that we'd be looking for long-term to make this a more sustainable community. And that included for us, it included pretty much a broad range impacting nearly every department that we have, including public safety, public works, as well as certainly housing, the environment, and some larger scale issues like that, public infrastructure, maintenance and reconstruction of our roads over a period of 40 years. That was one of the projects we had. And so to really be sustainable, we need to be sustainable across all different areas, including financially, socially, providing housing for people, providing opportunities, like the business incubator, planning that we grow our business community, we support our business community. And so we need to have a foundation on how do we do that. And those projects really helped define that for us and gave us information, both qualitative and quantitative, about what's out there now, where are we at, why are we here, and where can we go to in the future. So we really benefited a lot by having that input on the front end by the projects that the students did and some recommendations that transformed over time and are still continuing to do that even several years later into reality. So they inform our policy discussions on a weekly basis and help us actually get the work done that we've identified in our strategic plan as being important. So that in itself helps to make us more resilient, that we've planned to where we want to go and we have a means to do that.
Thank you, Administrator. It really highlights the ability to sort of leverage the students and their passions and move forward key projects to help cities become resilient. So appreciate
Certainly.
you sharing about that. Let's move to Dr. Burga. And can you share a little bit about maybe how you did community work before the RCP, and then what was it like after you're sort of using the EPIC model and having RCP and trying to partner with cities to do work together?
Certainly. So, working with RCP and the EPIC model has been really a beneficial and prolific experience for me. Before engaging Mike and his team and getting to know folks like Kurt and others at Ramsey and other cities throughout the metro region here in Minnesota, it was really challenging to essentially connect and build trust with community members. I'm a scholar that focuses on community engaged scholarship, and part of my work, which involves research, teaching, and service, arguably not part, but most of it is really about engaging communities, right? So it takes usually a lot of time, a lot of energy. There needs to be a lot of trust that needs to be fostered and harnessed in order to come to terms with the development of a particular project. And let's face it, right? Also, universities and university systems have not always been the most friendly to communities of color and also rural communities per se. Right, so these are struggles, I think, that are institutional, that are now evolving and changing, and it is through RCP and the EPIC model that I was able to really connect to public policy makers like Kurt and others who, essentially allowed me to sit down with them and talk and imagine the projects together, right? So, this has been a really rewarding experience in the sense that it has been made my life as a faculty member easier. It also makes the student work more compelling and grounded on actual problems and issues in the world. And ultimately also, it benefits cities out there because it gives them a menu of ideas, a template that they can refer to in order to generate interest and also mobilize towards some of these specific goals, such as what Kurt has described, the comprehensive planning process in the metro region, and or others that emerge at the municipal scale. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, it does. Thank you, Dr. Burga. And I think it's really exciting about just this community engaged research model. It's so critical, and that to be resilient, we need social equity addressed. So thank you very much. I'm going to pass the questioning back to Marshall.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. I'm going to turn it. Actually, my question is to continue Dr. Burga's thoughts on his projects, because that's really what brought us here today. Mike shared with us that you oversaw 10 different projects, and of them, 5 were highlighted by the EPA resilience tool that Jose described earlier on in the preliminary results that we're testing out as really associated with many of the different pieces of resilience. When you break down, what resilience means in the framework they're developing, 5 of your projects came up as highly involved in the resilience framework. So I want to ask you questions about those projects. So could you describe, maybe just using one of those 10 projects you did for the City of Ramsey with the Public Affairs 5211 land use planning course that you provided? Could you describe the format using one project?
Sure. And just to provide a little clarification, so I actually did 14 projects in the land use class. So that was a very successful year in the partnership with RCP, because we had many projects, 14 projects, which were all amazing. Just to provide also more background, each project was based on a different theme that ranged the gamut. Each of the themes was something that was discussed with municipal leaders and policymakers at the City of Ramsey. So, before the class beginning, Mike connected me with folks at the City of Ramsey, and I sat down with them and we discussed each project and came up with a protocol and actually sketched out the poster work for each project. And this is where RCP becomes really helpful, because they provide the communications framework, they provide the the sort of like the glue as well as the oil for the machinery to actually function, right, between faculty who are always very busy with things, and also folks on the ground who also have very busy lives, right? So this is where the connection is pursued and managed. And the projects were really great, enlightening. Each project that I do with students is composed of between 9 and 12 posters. So one of the things that I do is that I do posters. Each poster is 36 inches by 48 inches. So I'm describing something that is a visual, but hopefully you can imagine. And it also, provides a opportunity for folks to not only work on policy issues, but also get better at design thinking, and they're also their graphic design skills, right? Each project is a collection of policy analysis, which involves text, including also other elements such as cartographies, which are based on GIS mapping. There's also infographic design, and there's also site planning design. So depending on the project, you get different combinations and foci for each of these particular scopes. I think that Marshall has provided the list of the projects, and I'm really glad that 5 were selected. It's always, I was sharing before meeting with all of you that it's always hard to have a favorite because, you know, each of them is idiosyncratic in their own way and exciting in their own way. But one of them that really strikes me is the Rehydrate Ramsey, which Marshall is putting in front of us, which was a water-focused project. And this was really exciting because it was about water, which is a very important topic, an emergent discussion throughout the fields of resilience and sustainability, and becoming much more impactful, especially now because of the drought that we have here in Minnesota. But you can see a combination of mappings, iconography, ways of navigating the posters. It's a way to not only identify a problem statement, but also educate the public with actual information that they may find compelling. And in that sense, also propose a set of solutions or alternatives, which may involve data analysis, they may involve GIS analysis, or they may involve scenario building. So here you see, you know, simple scans like what are the water assets in the City of Ramsey and how they relate to actual policy questions and the challenges and opportunities that all of them imply. As we move forward, you know, there's that one, the water cup. I remember that one because that took a long time to figure out actually. Which is sort of like to educate the public. How do you educate the public about water conservation, and how do you make that into a compelling graphic so that people can understand it? And then as you see, as Marshall goes down, you can see that there's a combination of other graphics that sort of like try to explain the complexity of water retention systems and water management systems in manners that capture the imagination of the public, but also allow for people to actually have educated discussions about these topics. Continuing more interesting graphics and you know, text that tells us about issues such as infiltration in the City of Ramsey. And you know, I have to say, I'm not a water expert, so I want to come out completely clear about that. But you know, through the course of the semester, which is 14 weeks, the students become experts because they're basically challenged with questions that I constantly bring to the table when they're producing their work, right? So you end up having an in-depth set of posters that provide this information in a manner that is clear, compelling, and also educational. Oh, more stuff. I remember that one too. But you know, things like water systems and processes. Oh, I remember this one was a really nice one too. This had a beautiful combination of iconography, photography, and also some key takeaways so that people will be able to imagine and remember what it is important. And then some other important information about water quality impacts. You know, once again, this project was really challenging in the sense that we needed to educate the public and also translate a lot of complex information into something that would be digestible. Ultimately, you know, there's 13 other projects, including the Retail Apocalypse, which I think is the one that was also described by Mike. And all of them have this particular format, 9 to 12 posters. And eventually all of them are shared with the City of Ramsey, and they're also displayed in order to really generate a social experience so that people can come and share and learn together, and then change the discussion about resilience at the municipal level.
And just a clarifying point of question, those were that one was amazing. I hadn't looked that closely at it yet. I didn't realize there was so many pages of that one poster. And just to clarify, it was one group of students for just that one poster, and you had other groups of students completing all the other posters.
Right. So each student team is composed of 3 students, and you know, the class usually have between 30 and 40 students. So you end up really having about 3 posters per student. So the year of 2017 with RCP, we ended up having about 124 posters, give and take. Wow. So, you know, imagine in volume, that's a lot of volume of data and information.
Right, right. And I I want to highlight that as I'm working from my vantage point at EPIC-N, I see all the different types of curriculum and all the different faculty contributions across all the different disciplines. And this is just one of the models used. I'm sure Mike can give 5 other examples from other curriculum used to generate other types of deliverables for the City of Ramsey. But we just wanted to focus in on this one because it was so related to resilience in so many different ways. But I'm curious, what was it like, Administrator Ulrich, for you to work alongside Dr. Burga and then other faculty and students before the work got started and then also during?
Yes, we had a marvelous experience. It exceeded my expectations. The opportunity to wasn't just engaging the students, but gave us a real opportunity to engage the whole community. We had students out there at the local grocery store doing surveys, contacting local businesses. Really gave us, more arms and legs and a voice out there that we didn't have before. So it extended our staff resource that we didn't have, frankly, and allowed us to leverage the university as somebody that's getting out there into the community that cares about the community. And so that was really a pleasant surprise to me. And the other thing I have to mention is that the reputation of the University of Minnesota is stellar. People love the university. They love the work that they do. Their sons and daughters went there. They're alumni. They know well about the University of Minnesota locally here. And it's just was a really good partnership from that standpoint, that they were this neutral third party, but they represented the city. They had a strong knowledge base, and the students represented the university well, and the professors gave the guidance that was needed to make the projects effective. So we were really appreciative of that work.
Is there anything?
Also,
oh, go ahead.
Yes, I just wanted to follow up on Dr. Burga's comments about the water project and give some examples of tangible results and how that plays out locally, because we don't wave a magic wand and local public policy all of a sudden is enacted. We go through a similar process, not quite as long as federal and state, but we do have to go through our boards and commissions and have public hearings and that sort of thing. But with the water, we adopted a policy that said all of our developments need to go through our environmental policy board for a review now. We didn't have them stop there before, but they can look at things like water quality, impacts to water quality, impacts of vegetation and that type of thing, and how does that development impact the environment and the local community. And so we made developments take an extra step in the process because of the work that was done, and that's going to be valuable to our long-term sustainability. We also adopted on our website, the city's website, we have a toolkit. So it's a conservation toolkit that was developed by our environmental policy board based on the work that was done by the university. And so that toolkit through our website informs the community. If residents have questions, what can they do for conservation? That's where they go, and we provide that information. We also provided tangible savings to residents through a grant program for water conservation. So things that we're emphasizing are to protect the groundwater, grant up to $200 for smart irrigation systems that irrigate lawns with a smart irrigation that determines the moisture that's needed. It doesn't turn on the sprinklers on a rainy day, for example, but really adding tangible value to the community that way. And also for water saving devices like toilets and faucets and that type of thing. Also conducted a regional water treatment study with neighboring communities to look at alternatives to the groundwater source. We ultimately didn't, in this case, use the Mississippi River because it didn't turn out to be feasible, but it caused us to look and consider the importance of water conservation to our community. And last but not least, a local example, one of the studies that was done was on stormwater management and how do we keep the water quality in our stormwaters locally. Big issue for us that all these stormwater ponds fed with nutrient-rich runoff develop algae very early in the year. And so we developed some policies, some educational methods for our community, and policies that we use as a city to improve the water quality throughout the year. And those have been put on the ground by our Parks and Public Works Department. And those actually work. And it was based on the research that was done by various classes at the university that helped us to identify that and move forward with some practices and policies that make things better.
Wonderful. So those were a couple of outcomes were for the water project, and then a couple of the outcomes were for other projects that were completed through RCP with that year.
Yes, and overall we had 21 projects, so there was a lot of work done and a lot of things that keep showing up.
Right, and we don't. Yeah, unfortunately, we don't have time to listen to all of the outcomes. Otherwise, I would let you continue on and on and on. But I want to ask one other follow-up question to you and back to like during the work when you were working with Mike and the community, were you nervous about anything, or was there anything that came up that you didn't expect?
I alluded to it earlier, but I wasn't certain how the university and the students out in the community might be perceived, and I was very happy that they were received with open arms and had really a credible air to them, and they worked well with the community, and so that was great. I was concerned with the workload. We had, like I said, 21 projects. We had 9 team leaders, including myself, and what the workload was going to be for me in managing these projects. And I think the work that the professors did and the work that the students did took that into account, and they worked with us to manage that. We had some presentations in the classroom, which was good, and I thought it was important for us to be there and engage them at that level. And we also had a number of student classes come up here and engage in our community and have meetings with us here on staff. So the work was spread out. In short, it was manageable. Before we even embarked on this, I consulted with some of my peers from local communities that had done this before, and they all said, yes, this is worth it. You'll get a good bang for your buck, and you'll be able to do these projects and get some good work done. So I had some reservations going in, but all of that worked out really well.
Thanks. And I know Mike, as the director as director at RCP, is partially your job to make it go over easy for Administrator Ulrich. So it's good to hear that. But I was wondering if you could highlight the best part about working with Administrator Ulrich and the City of Ramsey from your past experience.
Sure. Yes, it is good to hear that everything worked out well. Well, honestly, I think these partnerships are about people ultimately, right? And people embracing the work and embracing the partnership and being committed to the work. And I think the staff at City of Ramsey, Kurt and the other 8 staff who participated in the partnership directly really demonstrated that. Their commitment to these projects, to working with students, in many cases to mentoring the students, because that's also part of what happens in this relationship. Obviously, students are doing work on behalf of the community, but they're working with professionals who, also are working in a day-to-day context. And so being able to mentor the students and share sort of the reality of local government and how it works is an important part of the partnership. And they all really went above and beyond, I think, in doing that. And this was, quite a huge undertaking for a city the size of Ramsey. Imagine 9 staff working on 21 projects. And that example of the posters you saw, that was 1 class, 1 project. So imagine really the amount of time and effort it takes to do that work. So it was an extraordinary experience working with Ramsey. We'd love to work there again if they ever find need for the university to continue this kind of a partnership. And I'm really glad to hear that so many of the projects have ultimately produced, meaningful outcomes on the ground in the city.
And one other follow-up question to you is, thinking about the projects and thinking about resilience and developing the local resilience of Ramsey, is there anything that you're particularly proud about that you'd like to share? Because I know resilience is such a big part of your EPIC program that I wanted to make sure we spend some time on that.
Well, I think, just the breadth of projects that Ramsey chose to work on as part of this partnership, I think demonstrates how broad that concept can be expanded to. And in this short webinar, we've highlighted 2 or 3 projects. There were a number of other projects that looked at the resilience of the city itself, its administrative capacity, its ability to retain employees. And so they really, thought deep and hard about resilience from many different perspectives when they were putting this proposal together. And as is the case with many EPIC programs, it's a competitive program. So we select typically one partner to work with, even though we get multiple proposals each year. And I can tell you that the year that Ramsey was selected, they were far and away the most impressive proposal, the broadest range of projects, and I think really the deepest consideration of what resilience could mean in their local context.
Thank you. And I've got a couple last quicker questions, hopefully, because I want to make sure we save some time for our Q&A folks, or for our attendees for Q&A. And so, Dr. Burga, over to you. You talked a lot about what the work was like with RCP and what the work was like with the city, but I was wondering what has this work done for you personally and with your faculty, as a faculty? Has this helped you anyway at the university side of things?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, one key thing that it has brought me is exposure, right? So, the question is, who is this guy who's producing 120 posters and filling the atrium at the Humphrey School of Public Affairs with like 300 people, right? Then how did he do that? So that brings me a lot of exposure. It also allows me to connect with folks out there in the community to imagine projects. So for example, one case, which is actually not with Ramsey, but with the city of Brooklyn Park, which is a suburb located north of the university. I also do work on food systems, and I'm still developing scholarship based on a project that was RCP that actually got a Best Student APA Minnesota Award. This happened several years ago too, and Mike, was instrumental in that relationship, and also just the support. So, it just is kind of like a gift that keeps on giving in different ways. The university is really interested in having a public face, and this allows me to really move in that direction with compelling outcomes.
Thank you. And for Administrator Ulrich, what are some of the outcomes? You listed some outcomes already, but I was just wondering if you had any other outcomes of tangible outcomes or intangible outcomes from the partnership that you want to hit that you maybe didn't the first time around.
I certainly do. Overall, probably the biggest point I want to make is that these were very valuable projects. We have a number of examples of things that have been put into place. Mike had mentioned the employee development program. So we were able to develop an employee, a career development ladder for our public works employees. And we're able to negotiate that and get that into the union contract. Again, not a simple process, but something that is now in place for our public works employees, which will improve retention, employee morale, give them some motivation for their work. And so those are the things that will have impacts on us as an organization. One of the main points is that Dr. Burga referred to it, that it keeps on giving. These projects are not one and done and sit on the shelf. They continue to inform our discussions about policy. And sometimes the process that we went through is more important actually than some of the physical products and studies that came out of it. Just the process of which built trust for the city throughout the community. Utilizing the partnership with RCP and the university is invaluable in terms of how we interact with the community. And that's probably one of the most important outcomes we have, is just building up that body of trust, informing people, having a much broader outreach than we ever could have had by ourselves. I think is ultimately going to be the lasting product and one of the major ones that we have. I have other examples of different things that we've done, but a lot of the project information is on the website. We have the historic town hall was one of my favorites, and it's a project that I worked on, and we want to we're a growing community. We're rapidly wiping out any history that we have with new housing development. And so one of the things we wanted to do was to ground the community in some of our history. So we do have an historic structure, which was the original one-room schoolhouse, city hall, and the students address that project from a planning perspective as well as an architectural and structural perspective, using different disciplines, a planning class and an architectural class of architectural students. So they address it from different angles. That helps us in making our decisions to reinvest money, get the council to cough up $25,000 for a roof on the structure to preserve it. And the work that was done is still being used to show this building has value, it has a history. And so it's products like that we'll keep using to develop both our project, our strategic planning efforts, as well as policy priorities for us, and use it to develop that policy over time. So those are a couple examples. I have more. I know we have limited time, but it's just rewarding for me to know that these projects are being utilized. They're being, they have credibility with our elected officials, and that really it wouldn't have happened without the work that Mike has done with RCP and pulling it all together for us and keeping it coordinated.
Thank you so much for sharing, Administrator. Mike, do you have anything that you'd like to share that you want to highlight that we haven't covered already?
Well, I'd just like to return the compliment and say that Kurt has been very generous with his time since our partnership. He was on our advisory board for several years, helping to guide RCP through COVID, and helping us to sort of rethink how we can do outreach to communities and how we can connect with other municipalities. So I appreciate his commitment to the program and his kind words about it. And the same thing for Professor Burga. He's been a fantastic faculty member to work with. And I can't say that about all the faculty we work with, but he's been just tremendous and so generous with his time, his willingness to help support the program and get the word out to other faculty at the Humphrey and elsewhere at the university. So again, those personal relationships are the key to these kinds of programs and partnerships working, and I really appreciate both of them for the time and effort they've put into helping us grow the program.
Thanks, Mike. I think I'm going to ask you one last question, and is how, if someone's watching this and they want to get involved with your program locally, how would they do that?
Sure. If you're a local government agency in Minnesota, anywhere in Minnesota, you can check us out on our website, which is rcp.umn.edu. We're also on Twitter at RCPUMN, and we accept proposals 3 times per year. So many opportunities to connect with us, whether you have a single project or multiple projects you're interested in working on. If you're not in Minnesota, the EPIC network is a great resource. It's a network of university and local government programs that are similar to RCP and share the commitment we have to connecting the human capital of universities with local communities to improve quality of life and social wealth of everyone who's involved. And EPIC provides resources and to support to anyone who's looking to build partnerships like the one that was described here, to collaborate on projects around resilience and the UN's Sustainable Development Goals, which is also another framework that many EPIC programs use. They can also help you find university programs like ours that might be nearer to your location, and you can visit them on the web at epicn.org or email info@epicn.org for more information.
Anything else from our panelists before we move on to Q&A? Jose? No? All right. Well, thank you again for sharing so much with our network today. I really appreciate it. I hope it catalyzes and supports and inspires others. With the increase in extreme weather events, we know that this kind of work is needed at a massive scale. And so we need examples like these to help us. For those of you who are in attendance, we'll now go into a Q&A portion of the meeting. If you're watching the recording, you can join future Q&A portions by RSVPing for future events on our website, as Mike just listed the URL. But why don't you go ahead and if you're a participant, feel free to unmute your camera so we can kind of feel more like we're in a group to get today. And as our panelists are getting a drink of water, I do have a couple of quick updates from EPIC-N, and I'll put the links in the chat for you for more details. We just launched a sign-up sheet or a sign-up form for a new communities of practice that EPIC-N will be launching for programs, but also for those that are interested in supporting EPIC programs. The deadline is August 26th to sign up for those. There's a lot of details on the link that I'll share. And then we'd also like for you to save the date for the free 2021 EPIC Network Conference, which will be happening October 5th through the 7th, and we'll have more information on our website about that within the week. And finally, a request to you all who are participating. Our speakers have volunteered their time today, and so we want to make sure we give them credit for their amazing work and taking the time to prepare this. And so I'll paste a link, or I'll paste a bunch of hashtags and Twitter handles for you if you'd like to do a social media post sharing maybe a quote or a thought or a thank you to our panelists. So with that, I'll move on into Q&A.